Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here. My OCD wouldn't let me throw away this jankety tripod until I took a shot at fixing it. So I just want to. There's there isn't really a theme to this video. I'm looking at lots of comics now, trying to kind of like look at broad patterns to talk about good comics. But the thing I'm thinking about is the elements of art and the principles of design recently. So this tangent is actually relevant. So I already did a video making fun of how awfully this was designed, and basically it's putting all the pressure on a quarter, less than a quarter inch, like a 16th of an inch of plastic. And I took a closer look at it, and I realized there are all of these grooves in the back that don't really add anything. The only reason these grooves are here are to make it look cool. And there's a groove right here at the critical stress point, so that not only is all of this pressure from this spring being put on this tiny little piece of plastic, it's actually just two little pinpricks of plastic, because all of this where I put this glue was a giant hole. It wasn't offering any support. The principle is form follows function in design, which is the classic principle from the Bauhaus. If you start adding a bunch of flourishy, funny little ornate details on a chair, but they poke you in the butt and they make the chair uncomfortable to sit in, you've broken the purpose of the chair just to make it florid and super duper cool looking. So we will see if my ingenious plan of using industrial strength glue to fix an obvious engineering problem works, and we'll have shaky free camera videos. But pretty much, whether it's product design or comics, design is everything. All right, so we're looking at a few today. I don't really have an overarching theme, so I'll just check off some boxes. So I gave up on Code Geass. My rule is if I don't enjoy it and I'm just sitting there being annoyed and feeling like this is obnoxious the whole time, I'm not going to force myself to read something that I'm not enjoying. But I really, really liked Majiko's comments. And something I try to do is I try to take special attention of the artist's notes and comments on their work, because I feel like that's them not just giving you a glimpse into their working process, but also maybe giving you a glimpse of what is the professional attitude like. Now, maybe it's possible that over in Twitter on Japan, Majiko is saying rude things to the customers. What's the equivalent of calling a customer a Nazi in Japan? Accusing them of being part of the Japanese imperial movement of the World War II era or something. But when talking about his own comic, Majiko is Mr. Professional. And I'm not going to read all of it. It's just sort of really sweet, like, wow, I've been working on this for 4 years. I'm so grateful to everybody. I couldn't do this without all of you. Wow, I finished this complete series. I'm usually so quiet and shy, but I've gone on thanking all of these people, and here are all of these little things I learned drawing the characters and reworking the characters. It's lovely. So I gave up on Code Geass. I got bored with it, and I thought it was... I just couldn't get invested in it or the characters. I feel like Death Note did the premise of teenager taking on the world a lot better than Code Geass did. But I still respect, Majiko's professionalism and just the enthusiasm he shows. So that's one little side note. Case Closed. Every volume of Case Closed is the same. If you love mysteries, you're gonna love it. When I was reading this volume, I was kind of thinking, not every single story has to be perfect for the overall feel of the comic to be just perfectly enjoyable. So, once in a while there'll be a mystery where I can't solve it, and I'll feel like it's not fair, like he didn't give me enough information to actually solve the mystery, or it'll be a bit obvious, not just based on kind of cues he's giving with, who the bad guys are and what their motives might be. And other times he'll do like a really good job of balancing everything. Like there'll be some great head fakes where he'll be leading you to think it's this person, but actually that's another little mini side mystery that doesn't have to do with the murder. The comedy is great. The point I'm making is you don't always have to hit every single cylinder to have the overall effect be good. For example, like one of the central conceits is that Conan has been turned into a first grader, but he has the mind of a brilliant high school detective. So he's trying to solve these mysteries, but no one pays attention to him because he's a first grader. Well, sometimes it'll feel like Gosho Aoyama's forgotten that, and Conan's just acting like a detective, and no one's commenting on how he's a stupid little first grader, and they don't want him messing up the crime scene. And I feel like that's okay because if the comedy side of Conan being a first grader isn't the main appeal, then the mystery is also appealing in its own way. And the adventure of running around away from the bad guy is appealing in its own way. It's because he has multiple cool things he can do. He can have one story focus more on the comedy and one focus more on the murder mystery element. I also think it's interesting how he's bringing back this Phantom Thief character a lot. The Phantom Thief was created by Conan's father, and it sort of represents Conan struggling to live up to his father's legacy and maybe not being entirely ready to be a detective yet. So even though the Phantom Thief is a fictional character, the fact that it's a fictional character created by his father kind of gives it this sort of nice deep significance. And I think it's really interesting how Gosho keeps reusing that idea kind of to challenge Conan, to give him a nemesis of sorts. So yeah, I love every volume. I enjoy every volume. Even if you don't hit every little point, you can still make an enjoyable comic. All right, so our main series we're looking at are Conan the Barbarian, issue something, issue 23. And this surprised me. I saw Barry Smith and I thought, wait, Barry Windsor Smith? Is that Barry? Yep, it's Barry Windsor Smith as a much younger guy, inked by Buscema, Adkins, and Stone, which I understand if there's 2 or 3 inkers, that usually means this was a rush job and they waited to the last minute to crank it out. And unfortunately, The Shadow of the Vulture shows that. There are a lot of squashed faces. There are a lot of inks. I'll show you one because I think this is important. So there are inks where it doesn't look like they sat down and they composed it and they inked it out carefully. They were just like trying to fill it in with inks as fast as possible. So you see how all of this hatching is the same along the side of its face, and this doesn't really connect with this. I think if you kind of sat down and think, okay, what's important? Then you say, I'm going to emphasize this shadow on his face. I'm going to, make all this black so we pop his hand forward. But if you're just rushing to get it done, you're not looking at the whole picture, you're just filling it in. Do that next, do that next, do that next. I got to pull out my portfolio sometime and show you some bad drawings where I did that. I wasn't looking at the whole picture, I was just filling it in from part to part. And the result is you get to the end, you've done all this detail work, and you look at it and you say, the eyes and nose look wrong. It's because I didn't look at the overall picture. Now, that being said, Barry Windsor Smith, he's one of the greatest artists working today. I mean, this is like a young 20-something Barry Windsor Smith, probably, and a lot of it is still very dynamic, big over-the-top poses, all of that great stuff. So even when Barry Windsor Smith is a lot younger and a lot rougher and a lot weaker than he is now, he's still showing a lot of dynamism and energy back then. I also enjoyed that, I think when they base a story on Robert E. Howard tends to emphasize, the savageness of Conan. He's not just generic hero person. He doesn't really get civilization or its laws, and that's part of the appeal of the character. He actually isn't the biggest and strongest guy ever. There are lots of people who are bigger and stronger than Conan is, but he's harder than most people because he's not used to civilization and its comforts. Shadow of the Vulture, fun little adventure story. Conan versus an evil vulture guy who's a super duper swordsman. One thing I was thinking of is the Conan world almost kind of evokes the idea of the biblical world, like really good Bible comics, not like awful cringy Hey Kids Bible comics, but actually like really good adventure story Bible comics with good art. That's kind of what the idea that gets evoked by Conan in his world. Oh, and this is the issue that introduces Red Sonja. So always there's like a problematic moment. Conan will say, no one fights all my battles for me, least of all a wench who should be tending a hearth somewhere. He is a savage man. He is a barbarian. He shouldn't talk or act like a 21st century male feminist. And then the reason that this is acceptable, the reason I don't think this is encouraging people to be sexist, is we understand it as part of Conan, a part of Conan's character. So yeah, he'll make this joke about how she Red Sonja, she belongs in a home somewhere tending a hearth. She doesn't belong on a battlefield. But he genuinely admires her, that she's kicking all this butt, and he likes tough warriors, and so he's intrigued when he meets a tough warrior woman. And then, unlike Beilid, who instantly liked Conan, Red Sonja is just completely not interested. She doesn't seem to be interested in men in general, and she's not interested in Conan. I merely did what I am paid well to do. For all I care, you'd now be lying headless at the city gate. And he says, "Shut up, dog." This is a great little writing bit because this is accentuating that he's frustrated, he likes her, but she's not giving him the time of day. And he feels bad about that. So he yells at the dog because he's grumpy. Great little writing bit. So yeah, not a very strong issue artistically, but it shows a lot of, it shows sort of like the young, youthful energy of an artist who would become a really good artist. So yeah, and a fun adventure story, of course. Okay, I think the theme is, I finally figured out what the overarching theme is. Not everything has to be perfect for it to be a perfect comic. A perfect comic does what it says it's going to do. Conan adventure story. Detective stories. So Captive Hearts, this is the final volume. Hooray! I didn't get to read volume 1 because the library doesn't have it, but I think this is the first series I will finish the last volume of it during my time trying to read all the manga in my library. And I love Captive Hearts. Now that I've finished volume 5, I can warmly recommend it. It's not a perfect series. There are goofy moments, but it does what it says it's going to do. Matsuri Hino wants to tell us a adorable fairy tale with some really crazy comedic elements of it, from the magic curse that makes Megumi act like a manservant to Suzuka, and she does exactly that. And I didn't read like the comments from Code Geass because they were kind of generic, like thank you, but I really want to read to you Matsuri Hino's comments, because I think I learned several things about her, her approach to story and like her attitude on her art. So, backstory. I thought about this part of the story taking place in China since the beginning. It's like the happily ever after in a fairy tale. After I wrote the first part of Captive Hearts and was given the chance to do a series, I suggested that the characters go to China, break the curse, and live happily ever after. But at the time, I wasn't given enough pages, so now I'm happy to have the opportunity to see it through. I feel like I just had a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Laughs. By the way, I originally wanted Hiryu-kun, who debuted in Volume 2, to be in the China story. But then she eventually cut him, because I think, you don't really need the secondary, boy character to make this work. This is a climax for Megumi and Suzuka's story. This one... Okay, I want to read this. Thanks for picking up this book. After 3 years, this is the final volume of Captive Hearts. I went as fast as I could. Looking back, I realized that these past 3 years have really been packed with no room to spare, full of happy times and sad times. Whenever I look at the stack of letters I received from everyone, I get so touched. So many people read the story from the very beginning or started in the middle. Of course, it doesn't matter how many people there are, but it does make me genuinely happy knowing that so many people are reading my work. Makes me feel so glad I became a professional manga artist. I'm unbelievably behind on answering letters, plus I have to get the book organized. I'll just take care of things one thing at a time. So she talked in the editorial comments about going to the hospital at some point while working on this, and the implication was it was from stress and overwork, maybe like giving herself an ulcer almost. But what I love about the way that there's a pattern to these comments. There's lots of like, thank you to the readers, thank you to my editor and assistants. There's lots of like cute comments about how excited they are that it's going to get an anime or a drama CD, or it's going to get merchandising, and they're building rapport. Now, maybe they're supposed to do that. Maybe the rule is you have to thank the readers, you have to talk about, cute, fun things and tell them silly, billy stories from your daily life. But the point is, they want you to connect with the artist as a real person. So you are kind of invested in them. You're happy for them. You want to see them succeed. And it works. Even if it's like a silly little Billy story about, oh, my cats and my dogs, you start caring about them because you get the feeling that they're a real person. They care about this work. They're happy when you read this work. I won't read this. This is her talking about merchandise. Hooray, they're going to sell like plates and things with my characters on them. This is so weird. I didn't think that they would ever sell plates and backpacks with my characters on them. Good for you. I'm so happy. You're succeeding. You're making money with your characters. That's the dream. Backstory. I always have to be careful before I draw Megumi. I draw him like a loyal German shepherd mix who's loved by his owner. In that way, Megumi is a dog. I think of an Abyssinian cat for Suzuka, but she always ends up looking like a chick. For Kuroshi, the dad, I think of a black panther that has the aura of a well-trained Doberman. a very well-trained Doberman. I guess this means I wish the characters were big dogs and cats, like a pure white Pomeranian and a giant Maine Coon. But since I know how great mixed breeds can be, my favorite pets are mongrels. All right, so, personal little, oh, these are my favorite animals types of things. But there's an artistic point there. She looks at animals for ideas about the poise or the carriage of a character. So the main character, he's a German Shepherd. He's a dumb, cute, loyal dog. The dad is really intense and disciplined. So he's a Black Panther or a well-trained Doberman. The girl is rich and comes from this noble family but is kind of shy. So she looks at a type of cat for just an idea of how they carry themselves. Like, there's no really obvious visual metaphor for why she says those animals specifically, but she's looking at animal life for inspiration about maybe the way her characters behave in terms of their mannerisms or body language, right? This is more stuff about the drama CD. That's just a really interesting thing. This used to be a thing in the 80s. They'd make Star Wars audio cassette tapes with, stories, and they'd have the sound effects and everything, and apparently this is a big thing in Japan to get anime voice actors to do it. You're just learning something about the behind the scenes and all the cool little extra stuff they do. My goal for the China story was happily ever after. The other key words I had were breaking the curse. As soon as I decided on the characters being the witch, Granny Fortune Teller, the bad dragon, the knight, Pseudo, and the princess, Pseudo, it became a fairy tale world. I think the whole concept of Captive Hearts is fairy tale-ish. I think the story progressed like a snowball that kept rolling and getting bigger and heavier. Oh well, I learned a lot. So yes, this is kind of a fairy tale ending to everything, where she sort of wraps everything up with a pretty bow and she doesn't overstay her welcome. Now, there's some annoying things, like some weird plot contrivances come right out of left field without any preparation whatsoever, and I forgive it because I understand what she's trying to do. She's trying to focus on a fairy tale story between the princess and the knight of sorts. They're not literally a princess and a knight, but she's using those character archetypes. She knows exactly what she wants to do. I want to end this with a happy ending and have a little adventure, and she does exactly that. Jumping ahead, that's more finding the voice actors and listening to their voices, listening to their auditions, being charmed by their performances. It's a human experience for her. You can tell she's having fun doing all this. Captive Hearts was originally a one-shot story, and I thought it was just going to be the first silly manga I did. I didn't hold anything back and drew everything I wanted to draw and decided to worry about the details later. But because of that decision, it created a lot of obstacles and regrets later, sweat beads. It started out as a comedy, but grew into something more serious while still retaining all the gags. It's a strange combination. I found out it's really difficult to give it my all while still staying level-headed. I really learned a lot. So that would probably be her referring to her taking a trip to the hospital and having to take a break. Yeah, you can tell this is a very passionate person, and she wants to pour a lot into it. And I'm also interested whenever someone's story starts to take over for them and they don't really know quite what's happening with it or where it's going. That I think that's the creative process as opposed to the maybe the scientific academic way of breaking down a story into all of these plot points and saying this comes first and then this happens and then on this page this happens. Sometimes I think when you're just creating and you get into the rush of it, you don't need to sit down and break down every little plot point. And actually that's a problem, is sometimes the plot points she brings up are weird, but I can tell that they're genuine and they're creative and they're just coming from this place in her imagination. That helps. Okay, more drama CD kind of, oh boy, all the voice actors and stuff. All right, I feel like Suzuka was Suzuka and Megumi was Megumi right to the very end. This is the end of the main story of Captive Hearts. I hope to write more about the characters in special editions and epilogues. I'm going to do my best with my new one-shot stories and series, so if you see any of my work in Lala or Lala DX, please read it. Thank you. So many people have supported me while I wrote Captive Hearts. My supervisor, Taneo Kasama, my new supervisor, she had some comment about how she always wanted to take him to China, but her editors didn't let her do it right away. So I think I skipped over that. I won't try to go find it. But she knew what the ending was going to be from the beginning, and I think that helps. If you have an idea of where you're going with the characters, then you know how to not overstay your welcome. She didn't stretch it out for 20 volumes because she actually had an ending in mind from the beginning. So She has a little bonus story. I think this was really interesting because it's like 7 years old and she's a lot rougher back then. So I want to read this because this is one of the most interesting things I read that I didn't know about the manga industry. Tell me the real meaning of that kiss starts on the next page. The art is completely different from Captive Hearts. The illustrations from the beginning of Captive Hearts to the end changed a lot too, though. I feel like it changed as I kept approaching my ideals of how I wanted the story to be, from silly to more serious. I wrote this story 7 years ago for LMS, the Lala Mangaka Scouting Course. So it's like a college course. I know that she became a mangaka as a junior in college. So it sounds like manga magazines go recruiting and teaching at colleges trying to find talent. This is a vibrant industry. They are actively searching for the new talent. They're not just like hopping on Twitter to see who has the correct opinions to work there. In 5 days, I came up with the story, divided up the pages, decided on names, made a storyboard, inked, and finished it right before the deadline. I remember I was in a huge hurry to finish it. I wanted to see the results so fast, but I didn't end up debuting with LMS. Even though I didn't get a job out of it, it was really good practice for me. So in other words, I have no memory of agonizing over this story at all. It just appeared in my mind, and I wrote out the script for it. So along with my supervisor, who was Ishihara-sama at the time, I aimed for debuting with LMG, Lala Manga Grand Prix. I received a second place prize from LMS for it, Diamond Rookie Prize. So these 16 pages appeared in Lala, and I got my first bit of fan mail for it. I have so many great memories from this story. All right, so it's a very straightforward. What I can tell is that Matsuri Hino really likes forbidden romances and maybe like subverting the tropes of romance where the guy pursues the girl. I think she likes giving the girl power or having the girl pursue the guy a little bit, and that makes it kind of like interesting and fresh. I'm going to show you like one panel where I show you what I mean, that she's rougher, right? So this is a bad figure. She's got like two tiny little baby legs attached to a fully grown female figure. Matsuri Hino, like she said, she rushed this and she got it all done in 5 days, right? So she was an art student, and one of her like common little biography comments is she would have been an architect or a traditional craftsmaster if she wasn't a mangaka. So she was someone who broke into the manga industry out of the traditional art world. So I'm sure that she could look at her work and say, oh, something's not right here, I need to fix this. But at this stage in her life, she's just cranking it out as fast as she can to try to meet a deadline, right? And so, yeah, it's weak, but then she'll get into her mature career, and she'll add, like, the cool little details, and she'll do, like, the cool floral things and the trees and everything, right? So that's the whole point. All artistic, your artistic journey is always about growth. So it was a goofy little forbidden romance story, but I liked seeing that glimpse of a younger Matsuri Hino. She did this interesting little 4-koma thing where like a 4-koma is literally like a 4-panel comic strip. She did this interesting thing where she gave it some ornamentation and she made it a bit more filmic and a little bit less like a 4-panel gag strip. And she just did a few of those for fun, like some silly little what ifs. It's Japanese cultural history time! The Tsuchinoko, a mythical snake-like creature that is said to have a body that is much wider than its head or tail. While the existence of Tsuchinoko has never actually been proven, legend says that these beings are able to speak, but often lie. Alright, I finished it, and I'm going to check out Vampire Knights, because Matsuri Hino earned my trust. There are some silly moments, there are some moments where I'm rolling my eyes and saying this is kind of goofy, but she knows how to keep it snappy, not drag on a dumb thing. Like, she'll have a dumb thing for a panel, but she won't have a dumb thing for 20 volumes. And she's very heartfelt. This is the emotional core I think you need to have. You need to actually care about your work enough to make it happen. All right, so some winners this time. And even the losers, even the ones I gave up on, you can still learn something. Even from something you don't like, you can still learn something about being a good professional from that. That's it. I'm #1 Marmaduke fan. Do not design tripods that put all of the weight on 2 pinpricks of plastic. I love you, and I'll catch you later.